All right. World of Tanks. World of Tanks. Starting this off well. World of Warships. Legends. The beta for the console. I was lucky enough to be in it. I've been in it for some time. I've played some matches, and now I'm going to kind of walk through some of this stuff. If anybody pops into the stream and wants to ask any questions, I will be more than happy to answer them. But here it is. The world of warships. You work your way up from these little tier 1 boats. As you do, you become slowly introduced to more and more things to pay attention to. This is the Albany class cruiser. Just for the sake of differentiation, this ship is actually a tier 2 ship on the PC. But on this it's tier 1 because the ships work a little bit differently. So we have selected our commander. Our commander there is Norman Scott. I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to be playing versus AI. Right now there are not enough people playing in order to queue into the player versus player experience, but this is fun too, and it should give a pretty good idea what you'd expect in kind of your first battle. Hopefully we don't fall on our face immediately. So that's our loading screen. Jump into a battle. So here we are. You're going to see a lot of different maps in this game that have a lot of water and different sizes and shapes of island scattered about. I'm a little bit surprised they chose this one for tier 1, but anyway, you can see down in the lower right, I'm changing the amount of engine power I'm putting towards forward momentum. I am playing with a control scheme that is control scheme number 2. It looks a little bit like this. Essentially, I'm using the left joystick to determine forward and back. Then I steer left and right. I can also depress the thing and lock it into place. So if I didn't want to do that, I could just hold that stick down and lock my rudder in one direction or another. Sometimes helpful when you're trying to do a lot of things. Definitely more helpful on bigger ships with longer turning radiuses than this one. This is just a little guy that shoots just high explosive shells, a whole bunch of them. So this is telling me a couple of things. It's telling me it's going to take about 5 seconds for my shells to get all the way over there. That they're a little bit inside at 8 kilometers away. Looks like he must be slowing down because I'm leading him way too much. Got an incapacitation that was telling me that his Engine was temporarily disabled. Set 2 fires, that's pretty lucky. Fires are going to do damage over time. I've got 2 guys to my right.
Enemy cruiser destroyed.
And I really do need to help this bot who's on my team. I'm going to focus this guy down because he's already on lower hit points. Try not to hit this island immediately out of the gate. So you can see some other guns shooting on my ship. Those are called secondaries. Secondaries fire automatically when you're within certain ranges. In this case, you have to be pretty close, but the better your ship, the longer the secondaries generally.
Enemy cruiser sunk.
So I can run into that. If I were to run into somebody who was alive, that would cause a lot of damage, unless it's my teammate. Ramming someone isn't always a bad idea, but it actually is a little bit harder than you expect. And then usually when you do it unintentionally. Alright, so he disabled his engine. Another way we can tell his engine's disabled is because you see those sparks coming out of his smokestacks. He's fixed that, so I should expect he'll start moving forward again. It would be really lovely if I could hit any of these shots. Disabled him again. He disabled me. Well, that's just annoying. So I just hit the left button on the joypad, or on the directional pad. That has kicked in a repair party. The repair party allows me to kind of fix things that are going wrong. It'll also let me put out fires that are maybe going on my ship.
The enemy team has taken the lead.
Well, I'm sure the enemy team has taken the lead because I'm shooting like that. There's not a lot I can do about it.
Enemy cruiser sunk.
Because if my shells are just not hitting, there's not a lot I can do about it. I could probably leave this guy be, but I'm going to try to put a couple more shells into him. The fire will most likely finish him off in a second. Now I'm on fire.
The ship is on fire!
What is going on with that guy?
We destroyed an enemy cruiser.
So I had 2 fires going there. At 2 fires, it's usually a pretty good idea to get rid of the fires. Each one of them does damage over time. So if you're taking damage from 2 of them, you're obviously taking twice as much.
Cruiser foundered.
All right, fantastic. So we managed to turn that around, and now we're gonna go try to hunt down some of these extra people. Yep, there's one. And the AI runs right into the corpse. I set a fire, he immediately extinguishes it. That's kind of a thing that you'll notice if you do decide to sign up for the beta over at World of Warship Legends. The computer does tend to put out fires as soon as you put them on, so you can kind of exploit that. I would not suggest, dear human player, that you immediately extinguish every fire as it is set on your ship, because if you do that, there's a recharge time, and that recharge time means you can't do it again. Probably for about 40 seconds. And there are ways of changing how long that is, but right now, there's the ways that I have to change it don't change it by more than a couple of seconds. That should get him.
Enemy cruiser sunk.
And there we go. When you first start into the game, I think you're gonna have to play against bots. They want you to kind of get your sea legs underneath you. So what you would do is you would play probably 3, 4, 5 games against bots, and then you would have the ability to play against other humans. It's fairly likely, but not necessarily the case, that by the time you get to the second tier of ships, that you would already that would be about the same time that you unlocked multiplayer. So the first ship that you might get might be the St. Louis. Now, the reason why the St. Louis might be the first ship you get to fight other people with is because this is our tech tree. And so what you'll do is you'll fight in the Albany, and then you'll get enough experience to get into the St. Louis, and then so you can see kind of here, this is what the experience screen looks like, and right now I just have a white bar across the entire bottom. That's because I've already unlocked everything that I can unlock, but as you go through here, you'll start with just the base St. Louis. It looks a little bit different. Then you'll start to get upgrades, like this is a gun upgrade, and you would select this, or conceivably you could skip it, but for the most part you want to take all the unlocks. Then you get the St. Louis B hull. This will further upgrade the ship. You usually get one of these, which is a fire control system, which gives you a little bit more range. And then somewhere along the lines you'll be able to actually unlock this. This is a destroyer. Or you can go straight on to the next cruiser. So this is the St. Louis. It's a cruiser. I play a lot of cruisers. As you can see, I've unlocked a good half of the American ships so far. But we'll just go through this. One of the things you're going to need to do when you're playing this is determine who's going to be the captain of your boat. I've got Norman Scott and some of mine. I've got Bill Sims and others, and Bull Halsey in a couple of battleships. Each one of these characters, or naval legends, has These are real people, I should say. They're not really characters. They're real historical people who they've put into the game and assigned them video game skills. So, in this case, you have the option of, well, do I want, when I'm commanding a ship, do I want him to have better rudder shift time, which means that I can, you know, turn my ship quicker. It helps me dodge torpedoes and things like that. Or do I want an increase in range for my main battery? And then by the time you get to number 4, you have ranked all the way up and you have all 4 of these. And you'll be able to choose one perk in each. And then after that, pay very close attention to the little circles. As you continue to level up here, you'll see that those circles will fill in. So since Norman Scott here is a 16-point commander right now, or a rank 16 commander, he's got essentially 3 points in every one of these. So this initially started out as 2% rudder shift. Then as you level up, it became 4, and you level up more, it becomes 6. In this case, I've also got my secondaries having an increased chance of setting fires. Now, I probably don't need that anymore, because I'm using, the only things that really have effective secondaries right now are battleships, and even then, the battleships that I have don't have very effective secondaries. So I probably actually don't want to use this. Range of guaranteed acquisition is just telling me if somebody's in a smoke screen or behind an island, I can sense that they're there even if I can't see them. I'm going to actually go ahead and give this guy... Man, I don't really need either one of these. I guess 30% is pretty decent. We're going to go ahead and take that, because as you'll see, as destroyers start to become part of the game, destroyers are fast little boats that shoot 1 billion torpedoes, and they can drop smoke screens, and the smoke screens basically blind you. You can't see through them, you can't see into them. The only way to really get around them is to have radar, or if you can see over them to some degree with a spotter plane. And then what else we got here? Turret traverse. It's a good thing to do. You want that turret traverse. This is actually kind of interesting because you could get your rate of fire down as you take more damage. I don't want to encourage myself to take a lot of damage, so I'm not going to take it. And then this just works on my damage control, reload time for consumables, maximum movement speed. I don't think 3% is going to do me any favors, so we'll just forget about that. The one other thing that each one of these commanders has is their very own base trait. You don't get to choose this, but this is just telling you, hey, this is a bonus that is automatically applied if you use this commander. So when I have Norman Scott in my St. Louis, I'm getting essentially 320 times 2, so an extra 640 hit points on my ship. Not a lot, but you know, it'll work out. Then of course we have the Japanese commanders, and then over here we have one for Poland and one for Germany. Poland and Germany aren't part of the initial release as far as I know, but they do appear on the tech tree because it looks like they are looking at a couple of premium ships. So this is a premium Polish destroyer, Pretty neat little boat. And then, oops. For Germany, we have another destroyer. This is the G101. This one's kind of fun because it has, as you can see, these two single launch torpedo tubes that actually launch kind of forward. And then it's got a couple of two-tube turreted torpedo tubes in the back. But we don't get to play with those. So let's just get back into it. We're playing the St. Louis. This is the Tier 2 cruiser. Cruisers are the middle of the road in terms of ships. They're fast firing. They have the highest damage output possibility. But they also don't have enough armor to take really, really big hits. So playing a cruiser is sometimes a thing that ends quickly for you when you're just minding your own business and then you're just straight up murdered. Alright, just sitting on the loading screen. So here we go. Once again, I just hit the center pad. This is just showing me the map. Who's playing with us. In this case, all these people with the little colons around their name, they're all bots. So probably everyone is doing more sensible things like sleeping. But we won't hold that against them, right? Alright, so one of the things that I notice immediately is I'm shooting high explosive. It'll show down in the lower right hand corner that I'm shooting high explosive. What that means is that these shells have a higher damage potential, but they also have less penetration. What they're good for is setting ships on fire. AP will actually end up doing more damage most of the time because you can actually penetrate the armor and do terrible things to your enemies. So right there you see how I just did a ton of damage. Said I hit the guy's citadel. The citadel's where all the ammunition is stored. If I hit him in the citadel, I essentially do 10 times my normal damage. Usually a good idea to use high explosive on these little destroyers. That's a destroyer right there. As you can see, it has totally torpedoed my teammate. It looks like he is slowing down because his engine got taken out. As a cruiser, you are best equipped to deal with a destroyer, other than perhaps another destroyer. You have these high explosives. You can reload fast enough that you can get hits in, get reloaded, start shooting again. And since destroyers are fairly light and fairly weak in terms of their armor scheme, that means that you tend to disable a lot of their systems.
Enemy destroyer sunk.
Now I'm going to shoot high X at this St. Louis, largely because St. Louis has a really good armor scheme, and it is essentially impossible for me to citadel it. It's not really impossible, but I mean, it's just not going to happen, is the truth.
We destroyed an enemy cruiser.
The Tenryu, I'll be more than happy to shoot. With just AP. That's the one that I've already scored citadels on. Not that particular ship, but you know, a ship just like it. See where it's saying 6.8 kilometers right in the middle? There's a little pair of triangles next to it. That's telling me that a mountain is in the way. So I'm gonna see if I can't steer around a little bit. Switch back over to high X, just to try to get a little bit. Oh no, that's my teammate. He's probably going to eat a whole bunch of torpedoes. You do not want to eat too many torpedoes. They are very high in calories, and then you die. That Tenryu has it has torpedoes. That's where those torpedoes probably came from. Unfortunately, the Tenryu does not have great armor. So, it was bound to happen, but I've now run into an island. And as I do that, I'm being crept up on by this walkie-talkie.
Enemy destroyer foundered.
I'm sure he was coming forward to try to torpedo me to death. Thankfully, we have dodged out of the way of that. Now I just need to track down this St. Louis. As you can see, I guess you can't necessarily see unless you kind of know how it works. If I had torpedoes, it would show in the lower right hand corner that I could press in my control scheme triangle to switch to torpedoes. St. Louis does not have torpedoes. That is kind of an oddity among cruisers. Most cruisers, but certainly not all cruisers, have torpedoes. In fact, the next one up that we'll see here, which is called the Phoenix, does have torpedoes. Not many of them, and they're not particularly good, but it definitely does allow the St. or the Phoenix to do a lot of extra quick damage that maybe the St. Louis can't do. There we go.
Enemy cruiser sunk.
But maybe what we wanted to do is not play just this type of boat, right? Maybe what we want is we want to be that light, fast little guy dodging and weaving through battle. Go here. I want Bill Sims to be on this, and I want Scott Norman to be on the other. There's no limit to how many boats I can make Scott Norman command for me. So like he's there, I got Bill Sims, there's another Scott Norman, there's Bill Sims, there's Bill Sims, there's Bull Halsey, and I haven't assigned one to those, I guess. So anyway, this is the Wix. The Wix is the first American destroyer you can get. As you can tell, it is a tiny little thing. If we were to try to compare it even to the St. Louis, you can see that the St. Louis pops in. It's a much bigger ship. It's a much more well-armored ship. But the Wix is very fast. And it has torpedoes. And that's kind of telling me on the left-hand side of the screen. It says Wix, destroyer, ammunition. It's showing me I have HE, high explosive, AP, armor penetration, and torpedoes. So we'll just jump into the computer queue and see if we cannot continue to beat up on computer people. Alright, here we have yet another map. As you note, it is lots of water with some islands.
General quarters.
Now down in the lower left hand corner I have several additional options. There's my repair kit, which is left. There is some white can of something next to that. That is my smoke screen. I would press up to use that, and then there's one that says right. It looks like it's got a little propeller and speed, so that's my speed boost. I can use my repair kit as many times as I like, but I only have 2 uses of my smoke canister and 2 uses of my speed boost. And then of course, here we go, switch over to torpedoes. If I hit triangle again, it changes it from wide dispersion to narrow dispersion. Narrow would be for if I was fairly confident I was going to hit something. Wide would be if I either wasn't all that worried about exactly where I was going to hit, or I thought I was going to hit regardless of how narrow the spread was. There are some good reasons to use either one of them. I'm getting inside that guy's smoke screen. inside this smoke screen, that walkie-talkie cannot see that I'm here. Now he can because I've apparently overstayed my welcome. Alright, looks like one of our allies took care of him. You can see that there's a little target around the St. Louis. That's telling me that he's my target. When I'm using torpedoes, this little gray line tells me where I would have to shoot based on its current speed in order to hit it. Obviously, a lot of things can go wrong between the time that you look at that line and launch torpedoes, because it's moving, you're moving, it could change direction, it could change speed. And actually changing your speed is a thing that you definitely want to get into the habit of doing. If you played World of Tanks, playing a destroyer is not all that much unlike playing a light tank, except that you're a little bit more of a team player, hopefully, in this. Your team often will rely on you to set smoke screens and do the other things. I'm gonna slow down here because I do not want to get torpedoed.
Enemy destroyer sunk.
And we're right back to shooting. I'm a little far away, and I did not play that he was backing up, so I will probably miss with most of those. Yep. But we're getting closer, and being closer will make this a little bit easier. There we go. And what that's telling me is cause some flooding. I hit with 3 torpedoes and sunk his ship. Oh no. So we have this pretty well under control. Now obviously I'm leading all of these ships when I'm shooting at them. The reason why I'm doing that is obviously because the shots don't get there instantly, and that's kind of one of the things that you just kind of have to learn by experience.
Enemy cruiser destroyed.
Very unfortunate if you miss with like a battleship. Battleships have very long load times. We should be able to get to a battleship by the time that I'm done talking to myself. So you'd play several dozen games, I imagine, in these before you were able to get to the next tier. This is the next cruiser. This is the Phoenix. The Phoenix, when you first get it, has just 6 guns on it, but it also has some torpedoes on the back. You can see them, they're tucked in the side. In any case, as you upgrade it, you get a couple more guns, and the ship actually becomes quite a bit better. When you first get it, it's pretty arguable whether or not it's an upgrade from the St. Louis. That's not all that important, so we'll just jump straight into a game. So you can see just kind of how the game starts to progress. Alright, nothing but bots.
Battle starts.
And now we are making our way out. Hopefully you'll see some slightly better destroyer tactics than maybe I use. I kind of consider American destroyers to be sort of a run and gun fun factory, but you know, not everybody agrees with that. So usually what'll happen is the computer will run in front of me, and I'm at 3/4 speed here to give him a little bit of room so he can start spotting people without me getting detected. That doesn't exactly work, so over there we can see there's a Wyoming. That's a battleship. It can do terrible things to me. I do need to pay attention to the things that are happening on the side of me because I do not want to get torpedoed like my bot compatriot there.
Enemy destroyer sunk.
That is another Phoenix just like me. Now I can shoot over land. Everything has kind of an arc.
Sunk.
Oh, that's bad. That's bad. Oh, very lucky.
The ship is on fire.
Now, yep, see, there's some bad things that just happened to me there because he got me in my citadel. And now he sunk me. So that's kind of the danger here at low tier. You get into these run and gun torpedo battles with a lot of fast ships sailing just about everywhere. The neat thing is, unlike World of Tanks, you can just pop out after you're dead, and you can kind of fly around here. Now, you're not going to be able to see anything that you wouldn't normally be able to see. So if there's a ship on the enemy team that isn't spotted by one of your teammates, it's not going to show you where they are. But if you wanted to watch from kind of a third-person cinematic point of view, you could do that. I can also hop back in and kind of glue myself to another ship. This is a Wyoming. This is a battleship. We will be playing a Wyoming actually in just a minute. I don't have to stay here and watch this though. I can just go over here, exit the battle, and if there are no humans left, it actually automatically resolves itself, and when it does that, you pretty much always lose. So, unless you don't care, like I don't care, or you know that you're going to lose anyway, then maybe don't do that. If you feel like you need to win, you're going to want to probably stay in the game, because right now it feels a little bit suspect. Let me just say that. So here we go. This is the Tier 3 Clemson. The Clemson is a destroyer. As you can tell, it is a lot like a Wix. In fact, it is based on the Wix. It's just better. Sort of an incremental upgrade. Initially this starts with 4 guns, and then it becomes, as you can see, double guns. So 4 turrets of 2 guns. You have a plethora of torpedo launchers there, 2 to each side, making this just one of the most fun little boats that you can play early in the game. I've got Bill Sims. He's gonna be my my captain. I should mention that the setup that I have here, my control scheme, is clearly not the default control scheme. I think the default control scheme is actually control scheme 4. I think right now there are 6. I'd suggest if you do join us in the beta weekend, which is coming up this weekend, that as you're playing those first few games that you kind of get a feel for which control scheme you like the most. The game handles remarkably well, I would say. I am a little bit shocked at how well it all has transferred over from the computer to the gamepad. World of Warships is a game that has a phenomenally high, I guess you would say, it has a high learning curve. And I would say that the community on the PC in particular are not incredibly helpful in trying to help new people learn how to play the game. That being said, we have an opportunity here on the console to make that a little bit more of a friendly environment. So I should be spotted here in a second based on that plane. You would think there it is. Nope, I got detected by a boat. As you can tell, if you've played the PC, there is no team damage in this version of World of Warships. You know, us console people, we can't be trusted not to shoot our own teammates, so I guess they've just taken that ability away from us entirely.
Enemy battleship foundered.
Well, all sorts of terrible things have just happened to me.
Problem solved, sir.
And it's only going to get worse when I hit the shore. But if I can swing around enough, I might be able to get more torpedoes off. So I was slowed in that turn. Slowing down can help your turning radius a little bit. I have no idea, so we're going to put a wide spread out here. And we still managed to hit him. So thankfully, he is paying more attention to
Our team has taken the lead.
the battleship, and we've just got a parking lot of boats over here. I'm gonna go ahead and hit this speed boost to get me back to the
Engine
base
boost
quicker.
activated.
I will say that the computer has some bizarre piloting habits from time to time. It likes to drive backwards a lot more often than it's actually useful. For the most part, you want to stay at least moving a little bit until you get kind of into a boat that might be able to long range snipe. There's really not I don't think there's really a boat that favors that gameplay in the game right now, but certainly as they move forward and hopefully add the other nations that are in the PC, certainly the American light cruisers are known as snipers, and you also have the British. Oh, well, that's just terrible. So that was helped a little bit by my speed boost, because it allowed me to essentially start to drive away from the torpedoes. And as I started driving away from the torpedoes, that meant
Enemy destroyer blown up.
Our team has taken the lead. Smoke generator started. Torpedoes to port. Problem solved, sir.
oh jeez. Essentially that meant that I was going to be able to outrun the torpedo, because the torpedo has a speed and I have a speed, and even if your torpedo says it has a 6 kilometer range, if you fire it at somebody who's 3 kilometers in front of you and they're going fast enough, it'll never close within the 6 kilometer range in order to hit it. You also kind of learn that when you start chasing down boats, because you realize that even if you're a destroyer and you're trying to chase down, you know, a battleship, the battleship's gonna move at like 20. You might move it at 35, 40, but if you if that's how you're chasing them down, you're not making that much progress in terms of like sneaking up on them and hitting them. This is just some miserable gunnery on the part of that bot, and it's going to eat a bunch of torpedoes for its trouble. and then we see a whole bunch of nonsense happening over here. These people aren't going to make a difference. What you will notice is in the top center there's the blue flag. The blue flag is our flag. And the red flag is the enemy flag. And slowly that box is filling up with red. And when it fills up with red, the game's going to end because the enemy will own all of the bases. So we have pretty well lost this one. We'll just go ahead and let it count that out just for the sake of seeing it. And there you go, another loss for TacticAngel. Not a great showing on my part at this point, having lost a couple of games. But here we see the end plate. Still learning some things. It's not like I'm not doing my job here. 50,000 damage isn't bad for a tier 3. But what this is telling me is that I've got 33,000 currency. My boat got 318 experience. I got 16 free experience, which can be used to upgrade any boat. And then I have 318 commander experience. Commanders are leveled up separately. Commanders can also dip into the free experience pool. But I wouldn't do that. Nope, I do not want to do that. So, after, as you're going through this, as you're going through the Phoenix, just like last tier where you could hop off and do a destroyer, you're going to be able to move into a battleship. In this case, the first battleship you get is the Wyoming. This is the Wyoming. It has 6 turrets. It is a little bit better at running away than charging things. The problem with running away is that you'll be being shot in the back side of the ship, and being shot on the stern, you typically don't have a lot of armor there. Driving straight at somebody, you will be using the good bow armor that most battleships have, and you can actually mitigate a lot of damage in a battleship by just good positioning. And then on this battleship you can see all those other smaller guns. Those are our secondaries. I have actually not fully upgraded this, because if you fully upgrade it you do get a little bit more hit points, but I lose 10 secondaries in the process, and for my money I'd rather have the secondaries. So we'll just jump into the battle with this Wyoming and see if we can't maybe do a little better for ourselves than we've been doing so far. There's my big beautiful ship. You can see it populated in and then applied the camouflage. I think they're going to allow us to eventually choose our own camouflage, probably from a fairly limited selection, or maybe it'll be earnable. It's really hard to say.
Battle starts.
So as you can see, that little caret just below the rudder thing is telling me where my rudder is. And this is where like that rudder shift time is going to make a difference. American battleships are actually a little bit more maneuverable than their Japanese counterparts. I can also follow these, which is fun. In this control scheme, what I do is after I shoot, I'm going to press X, and then I will be able to follow my shots in. This is useful to kind of get a feel for how you're missing. It's not as useful for things that aren't battleships because you tend to have to kind of slow down shooting in order to really get good mileage out of it. But other than that, it's just cool, right? So I think there's a pretty good chance that one of these, if not both of these Wyomings, are going to start shooting at me. I don't really want that to happen. As you can tell, the battleship has probably the best range, but it also has the most inaccurate guns in the game.
Confirmed penetration.
Now we're in a lot of trouble because I'm pretty well hung out here by myself. I'm just going to assume that destroyer is going to get wasted here in a second.
Target penetrated.
We've destroyed an enemy cruiser.
So what I am doing at this point is turning around. Because I'm going to be in a lot of trouble even if I'm not in a lot of trouble just yet.
Our team has taken the lead.
I could be wrong about that. We're going to actually shift back. Yes, believe it or not, this is one of the more maneuverable battleships. Well, it is the more maneuverable battleship at Tier 3. The Japanese have one. It's called an Ishikashi? I want to say that's right. Pronunciation 50-50. But that's a very different animal. To play it, it has 5 turrets with 2 guns each. I think it reloads a little bit quicker. It has a quicker turret traverse. He's closing within 5 kilometers. I think my secondaries are probably going to start opening up on one of these 2 jokers pretty quick. Oh, that Wyoming is not facing me. And what he's doing right now is sailing broadside on, which is usually a really bad idea to do against a battleship. And see, now we got those secondaries going. Those secondaries are choosing their targets automatically. I can't really do much about it, which is for better or worse. Just that, for better or worse. We're going to try to get rid of this Wyoming as we come along his broadside before we deal with the one that's now chasing us.
Enemy battleship sunk.
Now I'm going to turn away from him. And the reason why I'm turning away is because it will make the side of my ship a little bit harder to penetrate. And I should still be able to basically shoot 4 guns backwards. Now he will be able to shoot straight in to my or my stern. Oh jeez. That's no good for business, but it certainly could be a lot worse. Now what I need to do is kind of track these, or kind of lead these people back to the other 2 ships on my team. I'm not going to do anything about that because one fire is not going to kill a battleship unless everything else already has. And I'm going to count on my teammates coming in and saving my butt here in a minute. Now the reason why that doesn't like just completely annihilate that ship is because of over penetration. The shell is so powerful that it passes clean through the target without detonating. Even AP shells detonate. Now this is bad because that target can really mess me up. And I would really like my teammates, if they were human teammates, they would hopefully help me out a little bit more. It looks like I have lost the attention of the other Wyoming. I activate a heal, which is the damage control party consumable. This will help me recover some hit points that I've lost to fire or flooding, or to a smaller degree also the high explosive. Each ship kind of has a different effectiveness of its repair consumable. Or it may. They certainly do on the PC. So as you can see, our secondaries continue to light them on fire. And there we go. Do not be afraid to run away in a battleship. It's a very battleship thing to do. So now you're going to spend more time in Tier 3 than you will have in Tier 2. It'll probably take you dozens of games to get through Tier 3. Then you come to Tier 4. This is where ships are starting to look a little bit more like the ships that maybe you're familiar with. This is the Omaha. As you can see, they've added a turret on the bow and on the stern, and other than that, it's basically a Phoenix. Little incremental step up. Got a couple extra guns. We'll be coming to this. This is the New York, which is the Tier 4 American battleship. Starting to look a little bit more familiar, a little bit more like the ships that we saw in World War II. And then, of course, we have the Farragut, and the Farragut is our destroyer. This one actually is quite a bit different than the Wicks and the Clemson that we've already played. First, though, we will jump into the Omaha. First, change our commander back to Norman Scott. Norman, I think, is going to be my cruiser commander for the time being. So there we are. Very good looking ship. You can see the torpedoes on the side. Now we're being given more options though, and I think I probably should have pointed this out at the last here. But so we have our repair consumable, which is left. We have what looks like some headphones, which is up, and we have a plane, which is right. The headphones are the hydroacoustic search. This will actually help me identify torpedoes that are incoming quite a bit further away than normal. And actually, as you're playing this, it actually might not be a terrible idea to, almost as soon as you're detected, pop it at the beginning of the game. The way that these games, at least on the beta, are probably going to play out is two lines of ships that are captained by people who don't have a lot of experience rushing at each other and trying to hit each other with torpedoes. You may want to just be aware of that. A lot of the games don't last long enough to kind of last longer than that ability. So I find a lot of times that's a good idea. It's become less and less, at least with the player base that's been playing the beta. There's less suiciding or YOLOing, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go ahead and launch my plane though. That's going to help me a little bit with spots, making sure I know where my enemies are. I'm pretty much stopped behind this because I thought I was going to have a little bit more time to just shoot at this guy. But that doesn't look to be the case. Looks like he's slowing down quite a bit. Paying attention to the smokestacks can be helpful to judge how much you should be leading targets by. But then at the same time, you've got some flight time involved. Just activated that hydroacoustic search because the Phoenix does have torpedoes.
We've destroyed an enemy cruiser.
So that's telling me I have 20 seconds left of being on fire. I'm gonna see if I can't take care of the person over here. One thing you'll note between the battleship and this, right now, as a cruiser, I do not have a repair consumable. Not a repair consumable, but something to allow me to to actually recuperate hit points. So burning actually becomes a little bit different situation for a cruiser than it does for like that battleship in front of me. You know what? I'm not even going to fight the battleship. We're going to turn around and deal with this destroyer that's coming up on us. Sounds like I lost my fighter.
The ship is on fire.
Enemy destroyer foundered.
So I'm going to guess that the thing that's shooting me is that. Alright, so this is probably end of the road for TacticAngel because I'll probably get utterly annihilated by this second Wyoming. I'm going to launch my torpedoes and I'm going to try to steer into it. I need to get rid of those because I have multiple fires now.
Problem solved, sir.
If I can get myself around, I might actually be able to get the torpedoes on my other side. He's not going to be able to immediately attend to that fire because, of course, he stopped his flooding, and it looks like we might actually skate by with destroying that battleship. Pretty okay with that. Looks like we have a couple of other alpha testers in here. I have grouped up with both of those guys, I think. Now I could be shooting. Armored piercing there. That would probably work almost as well. But again, this is just one of those things when you're playing the bots, you tend to play a little bit differently. If you're going to be using torpedoes against bots, it's sometimes useful to set them on fire first because they will usually take the bait, get rid of the fire, and then you cause the flooding. And flooding is way worse than fire. Next up, we're going to put Bill Sims, our trusty destroyer captain, into the Farragut, and we'll see if we can't find some more success with the Farragut. Looks like we're all by ourselves this time. So this is actually the first time I will have played this. This is a completely stock, completely unupgraded Farragut. We got 2 torpedo tubes that are shared left and right. Looks like we have a nice wide arc. That's pretty useful. And we have 5 guns. Just like pretty much all the American guns, I believe that these are 102 millimeter, which means the reason why I'm using Bill Sims is that he basically gives bonuses to anything under 140 millimeters in terms of gun performance. For most ships, that means secondaries, but for destroyers, that's all these little shots that I'm putting out there, like this.
Smoke screen set.
So I need to pay attention that to my right is at least one other ship.
Engine boost activated.
Now I'm pretty sure he launched torpedoes, or at least he should have. Oh, there's a New York. And a Congo. Congo is the tier 5. So those are all secondaries.
Critical engine damage.
And as you can tell, they do plenty of terrible things to me. But there's really no but about that, right? So the sad thing about playing as a suicidal destroyer like that is if it doesn't work out, you might run into a boat like I just did, and also the secondaries are powerful enough on some of these ships to actually penetrate. None of the damage that was done to me just then was done by the actual main battery, or really the interaction of that AI with me. It was just I was close enough and detected, so secondary batteries opened up and I started taking a ton of damage. I do like kind of the ability to fly around these post-game screens, but there's really not much of a point in watching the computer fight itself, because eventually it's going to start making just terrible decisions. I think the AI, like everything else, is a work in progress. We're going to go ahead and hit the option button and exit out of the battle so that we can show off the greatest, well, not really the last. There's 3 more battleships after this. The New York. There were 2 ships in the New York class. There was the New York and the USS Texas. The New York no longer exists, but the USS Texas is down in, I believe, the Houston area, and there is a project to try to preserve it so that it doesn't sink into its slip. We got Bull Halsey on this guy. We're going to go ahead and take this out. This is also stock. And a bit of fun in the 1990s, The Shadow movie. The guy that Shiwan Khan makes throw himself off of the top of the Empire State Building is theoretically a crewman from the USS Texas, a New York class battleship. I know, everybody cares. I certainly did. And they throw a little dazzle pattern on there. Looks pretty nice. Now the purpose of dazzle patterns like this on your ship isn't actually to hide the fact that it's a ship, but what it does do is it makes it sometimes a little bit hard to figure out what direction it's sailing in from a distance. So imagine if you're trying to target another ship, you can't really make heads or tails of what you're looking at. It's hard to really judge where you're supposed to be shooting. I'm not really sure what the computer's doing in front of us. So anyway, as we move into the beta weekend, which will be next weekend, make sure to learn the quick command button, which in my case is O, or circle.
All stations requesting fire on the designated target.
And I can ask my teammates to help me out. It really doesn't make a hill of beans of difference if I do that right now, because they're not going to listen to me. So we can tell as we shot that we're shooting high explosives, which is not what we want to do. It works out just as well. I probably wouldn't have done all that much more damage. Well, yeah, I would have definitely done a lot more damage. So I have another New York right next to me. I'd kind of like to keep him that way, but I don't want to have to drive around like an NPC in order to do it. I'm going to quickly try to swing around and present my broadside. This is a bad idea, so that I can get all my guns around. All of my guns around. And pray that that does terrible things to his life, which it kind of doesn't. So you can see me kind of looking around. Playing a battleship is the most deliberate play style in the game, because it's not that it's necessarily a lot easier because you have all this extra armor and hit points that is going to make it, you know, impossible for other people to do damage to you. You're actually very, very vulnerable. But you have long reloads, so you have plenty of time to look around and kind of try to figure out, you know, what should I be doing? What, if I were playing chess, what am I going to do in 2 moves? Pretty little splash. It looks like he is changing direction. I'm about to take a big hit. So my hope is that this other Texas is going to move in to bracket this guy.
All stations reporting the position of a strategic target.
Since I was well angled there, those shells just kind of bounced off of me. Looks like he's moving backwards again, so I will put my shots straight into the backside. I'm presenting my bow now so that I do not have to take too many direct shots. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work. That Congo is actually a better thing for me to shoot at right now because it is presenting its whole side. Somebody's shooting me in the side, which is not going to make me a very happy camper. So I'm locking my turrets so that they don't rotate with my looking about, but I'm not entirely sure what is shooting me inside, and I'm not entirely sure why that other New York isn't being more useful. So obviously terrible things are happening to me now, and it's because that Congo's right along my broadside, and I can't really address it because I'm still dealing with this New York. And as you can tell, that other New York that was with me is being of no help whatsoever. He sailed off towards the enemy base. But thankfully, the Congo that's behind me is just as stupid, because it turned away from me as opposed to turning to keep me in its field of view. I got a torpedo capable frigate to my starboard side. Oh, that sucked. So that sound meant that it hit my citadel. That hurts a lot. You do not get to repair citadel damage back, but that's not so bad. We are going to be able to use that repair consumable again in 20 seconds. And once we do that, at least we should have 18,000 hit points left. Bye-bye.
Cruiser sunk.
Oh, geez. I guess we'll have slightly less hit points than previously advertised, but it looks like this game is wrapping up. Well, we won't get the kill shot on him, but we let him know we're still paying attention. So there you can see a little bit of how far we went. Got 500 experience off that. You get less experience playing bots than you do if you play humans. Quite a bit less, in fact. So this, though it says 54,000, like, yes, if I played 100 times and got the experience that I got in the last game, that's how many games I'd have to play if I were just playing bots. I suspect that that number is probably more like 30, 40 if you win them all playing against other people. It also helps to get this 1.5 times bonus, and of course they will sell you premium if you want that to level up even quicker. So I would suspect that the grind, at least if it stays off of this scale, is going to be pretty doable if you're looking to grind up the tiers. And then obviously after you play through what I've played through, you go on to even more modern looking ships. Get into the Colorado. This looks pretty much like a battleship, which is what you'd expect, since that's exactly what it is. And then you end right now with the Iowa, a sleek and beautiful ship that is very recognizable. Same thing here. You start to see cruisers with turrets as really their only primary armament. They start to look more like small battleships, and then they finish as pretty formidable little platform here. Now you will notice when you're looking at this, all of those baskets, those contain anti-aircraft weapons. And really one of the things that cruisers are really good at is anti-air. There are no carriers in the game right now, but I suspect that they will be added at some point, and at that point cruisers will become even more fun to play. Or people will be more angry with you if you don't play them right. One or the other. This is the Mahan. Another in this long tradition of just fun little gunboats that the Americans throw out there with plenty of torpedoes and lots of speed. And then you end with the Fletcher, which is kind of it's a great boat on the PC. I didn't get to the Japanese. I've also been working on the Japanese. I have several of them in port. This is the ship you start with. It is the Chikuma. It's pretty similar to the Tier 1 boat for the Americans. Not really a whole lot of variation happening there. After that you go up to the Tenryu. Tenryu is where these start to differentiate themselves. Japanese cruisers have better torpedo systems, but they also have no side armor, and so you tend to get citadeled a lot. Their guns aren't quite as good, but what are you going to do? You're torpedoing people. That's what you're there to do. From the Tenryu, you can go into the destroyers. This is the first of the Japanese destroyers. It's the Wakataki. It's fine. The guns on it, you should probably never shoot. But if you're already spotted, you might as well. Basically, it's a stealthy gunboat, or a stealthy torpedo boat. From there, you go up to the Kuma. Kuma is our Tier 3 cruiser. Again, it's got the hydroacoustic search. It's got a plane, just like the Tier 3 for the Americans. It still has the better torpedoes, and this one has 6 guns. It's still a floating citadel, so don't show people your broadsides unless they're not paying attention to you. Tier 3 destroyer, we got the Isukaze. It's the same idea. You're just getting better and better torpedoes. And then you can also spec into the first battleship, just like on the American side, which is the Ishizuchi, which is kind of a fun looking little boat. I will probably play through those tomorrow. And then obviously the Japanese go all the way up through the Congo, which we saw. We fought against this. It's pretty good boat in the game. You go up to the Fuso, which looks like they got confused and started building a skyscraper on a platform. To the Nagato. And finally up to the Amagi. Now I'm probably, when this game is actually out, only going to bother with the Japanese battleships, because the Japanese battleships are kind of fun. I'm not so big a fan of their cruisers, but the Kuma's arguably a better ship than the Phoenix when you get it. I think the Phoenix is probably a better ship by the time that you get to the next tier through its upgrades. But I'm sure there are people who prefer the Japanese playstyle. But that's not really for me. Anyway, that is all I wanted to do today, which is get through all of the Americans that I have. Still got almost a week until the beta is public for everybody, and hopefully at that point we can all have fun together and shoot humans instead of robots. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.